city, I've been browsing. Treading water that they drowning. My head on a swivel, yeah. It's only really my surroundings.
Hello and welcome to episode 226 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDadFF. Today, everybody says, Dad, Snook, all you guys talk about is you're buying this guy, you're buying that guy. Today, we're going to talk about some of our sells, the biggest guys right now where you can make the most value, you can get the biggest return. Nobody better to do that with than my man, Snook. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, Dad, and we're about 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. Now is the time to sell high on some of these volatile assets, running backs, wide receivers. We got you all covered today.
And what I really want to talk about first is when I say sell, like I put my list out, I have a sell from every single team. And a lot of people are like, Dad, why you say you're selling Kyle Pitts or selling Lamar Jackson or selling James Cook? It doesn't mean I don't like those players. It doesn't mean that I don't value those players. What a sell for me is, you know what? This guy's reached peak value. We like to, at Smash Accept, we buy low, we sell high, and we extract that value. So, I mean, if I can, buy James Cook at a certain price last year and he gets to a certain price now and I sell him for a guy that I think is ascending up the other way, that's where you can really start to, make some value. And we talk about that all the time here is like, we're trying to buy it when they're at their lowest, sell them when they're highest. And guys like Christian McCaffrey, they're a little bit more of an anomaly. Those are the guys we're going to hold for a long time. The guys we're going to talk about today have a lot more of a market, possibility to devalue here or even, get ourselves a proper return. Snook, how do you go about, like right now I have a list. I mean, right now this week I put out my insulated trades, I put out my buys, my sells, and I'm starting to look at the two and it's like, man, how can I make the difference between this sell and this buy? So then next year it's the opposite.
Yeah, I think you just got to address the position of value, like running backs. I'm always looking to sell high on the guys like the Kyron Williams, the Rashad Whites, the James Cooks, and tier back and get like the Joe Mixons, the Derrick Henrys, the Alvin Kamaras, and add draft capital for the future because these are the type of guys that will get a Braylon Allen or an Audric Estimate to join them in that room. And then their value goes through the roof or tanks down, right? Like, Audric Estimate or Braylon Allen come in to the Rams in round 3 or 4. They take that goal line role from Kyron Williams. Now what's his role? Like now it caps his upside as being a guy that can be a top 5 player in fantasy football. That's one of my biggest sells right now. RB6 to the consensus in all dynasty rankings. Like I went through a bunch of different sites, Keep Trade Cut, Fantasy Pros, you name it. All of them had like top 8 to 7, top 6. Kyron Williams, like he's going over Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Walker. Like Kenneth Walker outlasted Zach Charbonnet. It didn't matter that Charbonnet was there. We're not sure that Kyron Williams is going to be able to outlast a big body goal line bruiser like that. And the Rams love to run the ball. Kyron had some injuries last year, and he's a smaller back, so I could see him adding a friend there.
I love that for your first one is Kyron Williams. Right now I have Kyron Williams valued at the 107 to 108. I would sell in that area. What I've been trying to do is I'm trying to give you guys on Twitter, if you guys check it out, my thread, it's a matter of like, this is what this guy's worth. This is what I'm doing. For me, a rebuilding team at that 107 area, you can give up a second and get Drake London. And now you go from an area where you're taking a guy like Kyron Williams, who was the RB2 last year in points per game. It's fantastic. But you're looking at a guy that has, zero draft capital. They are definitely going to be bringing in a complimentary back. Kyron Williams has, they have no allegiance to him until they get to an area of draft capital. And I think Kyron Williams is that guy that I'm safe that way. On a contending team, so rebuilding, I'm adding to Drake London. Contending, I think I can get Saquon Barkley plus. Like this is an area where I think you could give up Kyron in a second and get Saquon in a first. You not only contend, but you insulate. And a lot of you guys have been asking, like, Dad, what do you mean by insulated trades? We talk about it where we want to get ourselves a first-round pick. There's a trade that I made last year, this July. We traded, I ended up moving Austin Eckler and a second for Ramondre Stevenson and a first. That first, later on in the season, you're like, okay, well, at that time, Eckler was going to produce more than Ramondre Stevenson. We knew that, but then it didn't quite pan out that way. Now I'm sitting there with my first at the end of the year. That gives you two options, right? You can either move it towards the class next year, or what I did was I traded it for Saquon Barkley. Now I got Ram and Saquon for Eckler, and Saquon won me the championship. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of moves that you guys want to make. That's why we talk about insulating and trying to move off some of these guys. Are we saying we don't think Kyren Williams is a top 5 running back this year? Absolutely not. I think he will be a top 5 running back or at least in that conversation. But when you take the process over the results and you get a Saquon Barkley, or you move down and get a Josh Jacobs plus, or you start to move some of those guys, or even take it. Today I made a trade where I traded Kyren Williams in the 112 for Christian McCaffrey. I'm taking that all day. I was the champion last year. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to go for McCaffrey because that's the kind of move I like to make. So if you had to choose right now, and I'm seeing it on Keep Trade Cut with some of these guys that are really close, between Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne, and Kenneth Walker. Keep one, trade one, cut one.
I would keep Travis Etienne. I would trade Kyren Williams, and I would cut Kenneth Walker. But that's the thing is, Kyren Williams is going in the same range as Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker. I'm fine getting any of those guys straight up for Kyren because they're much safer assets. They're more talented running backs on better offenses. And if not, then I'm fine getting Kenneth Walker in a second for Kyren in a third, or Kenneth Walker in a first, or Kyren in 2 seconds. But I'd take the other guys straight up over him all day, every day, because it's not even that I don't think Kyren Williams is going to have a good year. It's literally the volatility in the position and the type of talent and the type of situation he's in. Like, if they bring in a running back, we saw the Jags bring a running back, and we saw the Seahawks. Saquon just got that workhorse contract, and
they're not going to run with Ronnie Rivers as their RB2. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And they love to run the football. Sean McVay, that's his bread and butter. Get the play action going. I'm telling you, Audric Estime, Braylon Allen, one of those bigger running backs is coming in round 3 or 4.
Yeah, and outside of Hall, Gibbs, Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, and Christian McCaffrey, I'm tearing off all of these guys wherever I can. Yeah. And I had a trade sent in here from Howie Jr., and I love this. He sent Breece Hall today for Achane in the 107. I like that a lot. You could possibly get a Dunze. Then he traded Achane for Kamara and another first. So now he has Alvin Kamara, a mid-25 first, and the 107. That's going to end up being Kamara, who's your production, who will put up 80% of what Breece Hall will. Then he's got the 107, which is likely Rome Odunze or Brock Bowers. Absolute stud. Another guy. Those guys are both going to be third-round startup picks if they aren't already. And then you insulate again with a 25 first. And the running back position, Snoog, is so volatile. It moves around so much. Outside of those couple of guys, I'm not really interested in moving back. I'm not in that area where I'm like, okay, I have to do these kind of moves. I want to make sure I insulate as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And Kamara is a great one, right? He's a guy that you can get for probably a mid to late second. Joe Mixon, he went up in value, but that's another great target. Derrick Henry is a good target. James Conner's a good one. I'm trying to steer away from like the Aaron Joneses, and I feel like Aaron Jones is on that Dalvin Cook trajectory. His hamstrings are toast. If he has a good year, I wouldn't be shocked because he's in a great situation. But I just think it's a durability and injury thing for him at this point in his career, and I think he's breaking down. I don't think he's gonna. I think they'll bring in a partner in day 2 or day 3, and I think that he's gonna be kind of like a 1-2 punch and not really in that workhorse role he was in Green Bay. That's why I'm kind of fading him. I think the other guys are just better targets, and I've been seeing Aaron Jones go over some of those guys. So
yeah, I'm totally with you. Your biggest sell was Kyren Williams. Mine is James Cook. And again, James Cook right now is a fantastic. He finished as an RB1. He looked great down the stretch over the final 8 weeks. He was a top 5 running back. My problem is this time last year, I bought him everywhere during the rookie drafts. After, right before the rookie drafts for the 205. I was fine with that. You get yourself a running back. I was buying him late in startups, and then that was good. Then we get halfway through the season. We get ourselves to a point where, he's starting to take off. Now all of a sudden it's worth a 111, 112. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to ride him out because he's playing well. Now we get to the next season, okay? After the Diggs trade, I'm seeing him being valued at the 108 to 109. And that's just a price I'm not willing to pay. And if my stock appreciates that much, I want to sell a guy like James Cook. I want to take that and say, you know what? These are some of the moves that I would make right now. Because will he be an RB1? Likely. Is there a chance that they bring in a complimentary back? 100%. They are not going to roll in there with just Ty Johnson. They are going to bring in an Audric Estime. They're going to bring in, they might even bring in Marshawn Lloyd. They're going to bring somebody in round 3, round 4, because they are now a run-first team. They are not a team that's going to have a lot of firepower at the wide receiver position. Dalton Kincaid's there, Shakir, but they're going to have to get a wide receiver early, and then they're going to take a running back to try to solidify things. If I have James Cook, these are the moves that I'm going to make. And let's start out with the insulating one. Is I'm taking James Cook, and I'm trading him. And I did this earlier today. I got Zamir White and a 25 first. Snook, but for the listeners that don't know, how freaking awesome is the 25 running back class? You've started to touch on some of these guys. We have Judkins, we have Ollie. There's so many guys here where it's like, the problem is everyone says, well, Dad, this is probably a late first. There are so many teams. There's probably 8 teams in your league right now, Snoog, that think they have a late first. There's only a couple guys that'll admit they have an early first. And in another trade that I did, I traded, in an insulated trade, I traded Tyreek Hill for Christian Watson in a first last year. That sounds horrible until you realize that first became 103. Now I got Malik Neighbors, and Christian Watson's just kind of a throw-in. In this particular deal, there is not a 0% chance that Zamir White is either equal to James Cook or in that same area, but that 25 first will be worth more than James Cook this time next year.
There's about 5 or 6 running backs in next year's class that would have been RB1 in this class. Mm-hmm. And there's about 2 or 3 of them that have that early round 2, late first round projection and type of talent. You got guys like John D, you got guys like Judkins, you got guys like Ollie Gordon. The list goes on and on and on. And I think the issue with a James Cook is we already have seen what the Bills have tried to use him as, right? Like they brought in 33-year-old Latavius Murray. They called him up. He got off his couch. He put on football pads and he said, let's ride, as their goal line running back.
Yep.
They're not trying to wear down James Cook in any way. They're trying to keep him fresh, explosive in that passing down role in between the 20s. I don't think there's a chance that James Cook can finish top 10 to 15 with an Audric Estime or with a Braylon Allen there, because his touchdowns are probably going to be less than 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Mixtured with Josh Allen, who scores 15 rushing touchdowns a year. Braylon Allen or an Audric Estime or an Isaiah Davis in day 3, just a big-bodied goal line running back, maybe gets 6 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns.
Well,
and then he's attached to him like flies on poop for the rest of his career. So
for sure, man. And that's the thing. It's like James Cook had 2 games last year over 20 carries. And everybody's like, oh, but what about the PPR points? I mean, he had only over 5 receptions, only over 5 targets 3 times. So, I mean, like, he's a nice
He's not Jahmyr
back.
Gibbs, and people think he is.
He's a nice back. In a rebuilding team, I'm seeing him right now. If I have James Cook, I'm trading him straight up for George Pickens because I want to get off that running back and I want to get a wide receiver that's in that similar value. If I'm contending, just like I said before, and this is kind of a bit of a theme, I'm adding a second to get to Saquon. Saquon's going to kill it this year, and I think, he's got plenty left in the tires. For me, it's just like a guy like James Cook is nice. I'm not selling him for marbles. When we say a guy is selling, that doesn't mean I'm trading him for James Conner in a second. James Conner in a first, sure. Or if I want to move back to right now, you add a little bit to James Cook and you move yourself into another area to insulate. When we say sells, that just means, you know what? This is the prime time. This is their peak value. Not like a CJ Stroud, right? CJ Stroud is at prime value. He can't go up more than he is today. However, he's going to last that way for 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years. Where James Cook, it's a 2-year window, and that's why it's so easy for the running back position for me to say, I'm moving up to the next guy. I want to get a production. Who's your next sell? So we got 2 down. We're giving you 12 today. We're going to give you our biggest guys and really just try to put you guys in a position before the draft.
We're going to keep it on brand. Same running back class, 2022 Rashad White. And this was a guy that I was super high on as a rookie. He was my RB3 in this class right after Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker. The receiving upside was through the roof. I just think he's in a range where he can't get any higher, but he can get lower. And I think he's a great player. I think he's a good running back. I think he has the receiving upside. I think you can get maybe a few more good years out of him, but this Buccaneers team clearly wants to contend, and his backup running back is like Keyshawn Vaughn. And Sean Tucker, maybe he emerges. I know he had that heart condition. That's tough to bounce back from, but like, they're going to bring a friend in. Like they used Keyshawn Vaughn way too much last year. they're going to find himself a friend to pair up with Rashad White, and that's going to affect his fantasy value. And I know we say it, oh, it doesn't matter for guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara. They're the best of the best elite running backs in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield, being a playmaker, being explosive runners. Rashad White's not on their level, and that's where James Cook falls into place too, right? Like, it's not even if they bring in, like, say they don't bring in an Audric Estime or a Braylon Allen for Cook or Rashad White. What, like, is their ceiling? Maybe they finish top 8 again. I'd still take a Saquon Barkley on a max contract over him. I'd still take a Josh Jacobs on a max contract over him. These are better running backs going in the same range. They're a bit older, but not by much. Rashad White's already 25 years old. They can both catch the ball out of the backfield, and they're both on much, much, much better offenses where they can hit that top 3, top 5 ceiling. And that's why it's not even like I tweeted this earlier, and Dad, we say it all the time. It's not that I'm out on this player. He stinks. It's that I just prefer guys in their relative areas over them at cost.
Yeah, what if you had to choose between White and James Cook? Because they're similarly valued right now. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me where like Rashad White was the RB2 in some formats, the RB4 in others. Cook was a back end guy. And I think, either of these guys, I prefer White over Cook. So I want to go with you next on that. But I mean, where would they rank in next year's class? Like what's the random first? Is it 104? Is it 105? Is it 106? What's that first next year where you'd sell out on these guys?
Yeah, I think I'd take James Cook over Rashad White. I think Rashad White's a better player, but I think the Buccaneers offensive line either sucks or Rashad White struggled between the 20s because he was in like that 3.6 yards per carry, just very inefficient runner, got the volume, got the workload. 60 plus receptions is key, but James Cook's on a much, much better offense. They're going to run the ball a lot. Even if they bring in a partner for both of those teams, I think Cook's going to hold his value a bit more because he's just on a much better offense tied to an elite quarterback. And I think his role is going to be a little bit more cemented than Rashad White. I think Rashad White's a better talent, but I think James Cook's situation just outweighs the talent there. And they're like flip a coin, take who you want type of players for me.
Yeah, and I think White might have a longer career because of he's a top 5 receiving running back for me.
I think White's like 3 years older than him.
They're both 25.
Really?
It's crazy. Yeah. James Cook will be 25 in September, so they're
they're
both older. I know it's just those perceptions.
I take Najee over both of them. No lie.
I had to look it up. Now we've hit on 2 running backs or 3 running backs. I'm going to go outside the running back position. I'm going to name somebody that everybody's just going to get mad about, but we're going to tell you why. All right, my sell is Sam LaPorta. I know that's crazy. He's valued around the 104 right now, okay? He is in a prime ideal situation, but my thought process here is, and I've made multiple moves, and I want to talk to you about a couple of them. Today, I got the 106 and Michael Mayer. So I'm thinking I'm getting Brock Bowers at 6. Move. If I don't get Brock Bowers at 6, then Odunze's there, or Drake May, or another quarterback I like. So it's like, if May falls, okay, I'll take the quarterback, and be able to flip, and then a guy like Mayer, who I think is ascending. Or if Brock Bowers falls, now all of a sudden I got 2 shots to be that same guy in Sam LaPorta. The other one, we've been talking about this for a while. I got it done earlier this week. I traded Sam LaPorta in a second for Dalton Kincaid in a 25 first, and I think Dalton Kincaid is going to really close that gap. I don't even think there's a 0% chance that he could pass Sam LaPorta. Do I love Sam LaPorta? Absolutely. Did I buy him for the 205 to 210 last year? Yes. Now he's reached a point where I'm okay selling. The talent is really, really good. It's not Brock Bowers level good in my opinion, but he's a fantastic tight end. I would be willing to make those kind of moves. Am I selling him for Evan Ingram plus? No, that's not where I'm going. I'm saying if I can get a Brock Bowers, if I can get a Dalton Kincaid, heck, if I could even get, I think you could get Kyle Pitts in a first, and Kyle Pitts is in that same area, or you might have to throw in a veteran sometimes. What I try to do is I say, well, LaPorta's worth more than Kyle Pitts. I'm on a rebuilding team here. Why don't I give you Sam LaPorta and DeAndre Hopkins or Keenan Allen? You give me Kyle Pitts in a first, and we start to insulate. You start to get yourself, more shots in the chamber to give yourself a better player. So I know people don't say sell Sam LaPorta, but that's the thing, Snoop. It's like we're not sitting here. You listen to most analysts and they're like, sell Keenan Allen because he's 31. sell Gus Edwards. No, we're going to give you guys that are names that have value. Like, right? No one wants to go buy Gus Edwards, but everybody in your league is buying Sam LaPorta. Exactly. Here's a quick idea on how to flip it and make some money.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it on the head there. And I love that you mentioned like the Michael Mayer and the pick option, because like I'm one of those guys that has Brock Bowers higher, if not on the same trajectory as a Sam LaPorta. I think if you break them down for what they are talent-wise, Brock Bowers takes his socks and runs, right? Like it's not even close in terms of just talent. I think Brock Bowers and a Michael Mayer, who's another guy that was a very, very good tight end prospect, very highly regarded, had a good rookie year, flashed a lot of talent. That's like a free Michael Mayer, in my opinion, for me. And that's like a guy that I would pay a good second for, because he was a great prospect. And a lot, myself included, I had him over Sam LaPorta coming into the rookie draft process. Like I had Kincaid, Mayer, then LaPorta. I think LaPorta cemented himself as the tight end one out of that class just with his situation. But
for sure. Yeah.
Kincaid, especially Kincaid can get on that LaPorta level, especially now. Like you could argue Kincaid's as talented, if not more talented than LaPorta as well. So LaPorta's not a guy that's like the world's most talented tight end, the best athlete ever. Like he is a good player in a great situation. And I think maybe the emergence of Jameson Williams can kind of start to take targets away. Jahmyr Gibbs being a second-year running back, he's a guy that could catch 70 passes out of the backfield. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown's a guy that gets 180 targets. I don't even think that I could see a world where LaPorta's not finishing top 5, top 6 year after year, but there's a world where he's not hitting tight end 1, tight end 2, tight end 1, tight end 2, like a Kelsey, like a Mark Andrews. So I look at him as like a top 2 to 3 dynasty tight end, but like him, Bowers, and McBride are interchangeable, and tearing off a guy like that, getting Kincaid in a late first or a first is just a move that can help build out the roster and still get that elite production at the tight end position. But switching over from tight ends, I want to talk about a sell that's very controversial, because I've tweeted this. I've always been on the sell Jordan Addison wave. A lot of people don't love it. He's a guy that I feel like people think he's better than what he actually is. Like people talking about him like Devontae Smith, Chris Olave. Like he is not as talented as those guys. And he's a good player. He's talented for sure. I'm not saying he's not. But he is in the worst situation to be in for a wide receiver right now. He is in that Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Chris Olave situation as the third option on his team. So it's not like he's the guy that's going to get 160 targets and get like 1,100, 1,200 yards. Like everyone's like, oh, he's Garrett Wilson. Like he holds his value. He is literally on a team with Sam Darnold as the quarterback as of today, right? Like we don't know anything. We don't know if they're going to get into the top 3. Right now they're at 11 and they're trying to get into that top 3, but it doesn't seem like it's happening. If it does happen and they get Drake May or they get Jaden Daniels, my opinion on Jordan Addison will completely change. He'll be that high-powered number 2. I'll like him. He'll be a top 18, top 20 guy again. But right now he is that guy, and he's got Sam Darnold, who's a quarterback that started for like 4 different teams. He's not good, and he's playing behind the world's best wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, who gets 200 targets a year, and a tight end 1 in TJ Hawkinson. So it's too many mouths to feed with no quarterback. And it's like, why do I want a guy like that going that high when I can just trade Addison and go get DJ Moore, who's going to have an elite quarterback? And he already had an elite season coming off of last year.
Yeah, I have him as my wide receiver 21 in the same area as Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf. Some people have him all the way up there with Nico Collins and Michael Pittman and DJ Moore. And that's where the line is for me, right? Like he's a very good route runner. He's kind of, he's a little bit undersized, but I think he's a guy that is a nice wide receiver 2 on his team for a while. There is I was thinking the other day, I was like trying to figure out who the Bills are going to get. I was like, the Bills go get Jefferson, open up an area where, maybe Addison can thrive, but I don't think that's a pipe dream. You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm like, okay, maybe that happens. But if you are trying to sell Addison, you're trying to add a second to get a DJ Moore, maybe, give yourself a 25 first plus a, if you're a contender, maybe get yourself a Keenan Allen or get yourself maybe even as low as, say, maybe Curtis Samuel in a first that could be a little bit better. But I'm with you. I have a lot of Jordan Addison shares, so I'm not completely out. But that's what's great about Dynasty is like you're selling. I'm buying. And that's where so many people, like I've been putting these things out in the Patreon. Everybody's like, Dad, you said to sell Devon A-Chain and go ahead and buy Javonte Williams in a first. But why Javonte? Who I prefer this guy. Then go buy that guy. This is just a matter of principle where it's like, Snoog and I have hit on these guys for the years after years where it's like, I'm selling this guy for this guy plus a first. Now all of a sudden the first is worth the same as this guy and the player. It's a 2-for-1. You know, like that's the best way to go about and try to do some of those things. My next guy.
Hold on, before you jump into that, I have one thing to say. Everyone's telling you to sell Tank Dell. He's the third option on a team with CJ Stroud. Jordan Addison's the third option on a team with Sam Darnold. Make it make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you a little bit. Sticking with the same position, and I'm going to be selling someone here that I think everyone's going to get upset with me again, but Jaden Reed. We loved him. We were buying him for late seconds, early thirds, and in rookie drafts. Now he's valued all the way up at the 109. You know, Keep Trade Cut has him in the same area as Tank Dell and George Pickens. And for me, I'm just like, I'm not investing in that type of way. If I can sell right now on a rebuilding team, I am taking Rashee Rice plus a second all day long. Rashee Rice just continues to fall. As far as Rashee Rice goes, as soon as the suspension goes, he's probably going to fall again. Then buy. Like, you're going to get him so cheap. And the suspension's only going to be max 6 games. This is not like a guy's going to be doing jail time. We've talked about that ad nauseum, so I'm not even worried about it. I would trade Jaden Reed straight up for Deebo Samuel because people are calling Jaden Reed Deebo light. But again, Deebo is an absolute monster. We haven't seen the same thing from Reed. If I'm contending, if you could insulate and give me Jaden Reed in a second for Mike Evans in a first, or Mike Evans in a early second in this year's class, where I can go ahead and I can get another running back and get a 2-for-1, that's the kind of move that I'm making because I really love Jordan Love. You guys know that. I think there's a lot of mouths to feed. I think Dontavian Wicks is probably the best value there. Christian Watson's super cheap. And if you like those guys, I mean, I think you can even get Jaden Reed. You know, I think you could do that same 1-2 swap where you give up Jaden Reed in a second to get Dontavian Wicks in a first. Like, I was looking the other day. I did my yearly rankings, you know, for April on the 2024, you know, wide receiver rankings. Fantasy Pros had Dontavian Wicks outside the top 50. I was just blown away. Like, okay, the rest of the community, your guys that are redraft centric, those guys that are going to show up, you know, for your rookie draft out of the blue, are not in on Dontavian Wicks the way they should be. And I think you can buy him for 205 to 207 in your rookie draft when they have the fever. Just go get Wicks. Move off of Reed. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'll expand on that. I'll throw in Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson as sells as well.
Yeah,
I think that an entire Packers roster is a sell out in that wide receiver room besides Dontavian Wicks. I like Jaden Reed. I like the talent, but he's literally tripled Dontavian Wicks' value, and you could argue Wicks is a better player. And he flashed so much. He was such a good route runner, and he's that big possession receiver for Jordan Love. He's just a much better value than those guys. I think he's better than Doubs. I think Christian Watson, does he even have hamstrings at this point in time? Like, he is a guy that's going to play 5 games and then he's going to be on the IR. And it stinks because he's such a talented.
Spears doesn't have ACLs and Christian Watson doesn't have hamstrings.
Christian Watson's such a talented athlete. Just like he's an elite athlete, but he's just can't stay on the field. And it's not even that. Like, he's very raw. He's like a Chase Claypool. Like, he's that 6'4" guy. He's not a great separator. He's kind of like that vertical threat, relies on touchdown upside. He was my biggest sell last year when he was valued as a top 15 wide receiver in Dynasty. And now he's still a sell when he's in the wide receiver 30s range because turn Reed into Mike Evans, turn Reed into Devontae Adams, turn Christian Watson into Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen. Like, do those type of moves because, like, worst comes worst, say Watson breaks out, he's not outscoring any of those guys. So at least, like, in your mind, you're like, I got top 15 production out of Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper, so I'm fine with it. Like, I'm pushing for the ship. Dontavian Wicks is a guy, like you said, valued in the 60s range, and he's probably the best wide receiver on that Packers roster as of today.
You ready for the announcement of who I'm selling that's just going to break the internet?
Yeah.
Yo, I'm selling Christian McCaffrey. Okay. Now, if you are trying to repeat, and he's still there and that's your key piece, I'm not saying sell him for nothing. But right now, Christian McCaffrey, we have never had I believe he's 28. Will he be 29 this year, or is he just 28?
He'll be 29, yeah.
He'll be 29, I think. So we've never had a running back valued like this. We've also never had a running back like Christian McCaffrey. But the insulated trade that I am making everywhere is Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne, or Josh Jacobs in a mid-25 first.
I love it.
Hear me out for this. So you're looking at guys that are going to put up 85%. Saquon could put up almost 90% of what Christian McCaffrey does. You know, but those other guys, there are RB1s that will put up 80 to 85% of what Christian McCaffrey does. Then you have and I'm not saying any first. So when we talk insulated trades, I'm not, if you won if I won it all last year and you were the 111 and we played in the championship, I'm not making this trade with you. I'm making this trade with that guy who was just missed the playoffs or just squeaked into the playoffs and thinks that Christian McCaffrey is going to put him over the top. That guy that thinks that, oh, well, if I get Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't matter. The rest of my roster is not there. I'm going to win the championship. So now I get Saquon plus their mid-first. All of a sudden, he loses Christian McCaffrey to injury, and Saquon Barkley and Quinshon Judkins are on my team. You know, we get to an area like that where you can, the other part of the insulated trade is like, I can trade that mid-first later, but if Christian McCaffrey goes down to injury, he did not last year, he played every game, heaven forbid it happens, he tears his ACL or something like that, he's going to be 30 years old. What's his value? Right now, he is a second-round startup pick, but if Christian McCaffrey gets a season-ending injury, Snoog, what is Christian? Is he worth a first even anymore? Like, would you pay the 112 if he tears his ACL? I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know it's a really difficult situation. So is Christian McCaffrey the RB1 in redraft? 100%. Am I saying that I'm actively trying to get rid of him? No. Am I trading him for a bunch of scraps? No. But I mean, if I could get one of those guys, or if I could get, you know, Joe Mixon and 2 firsts, which I think is in the realm of possibilities. Like, and if one of those could be mid, think about that. That's a career, that's like a game changer. You get yourself where Joe Mixon puts up 75% of what Christian McCaffrey does. Because Joe Mixon was the RB6 last year. So you got Mixon, you get him as your RB1. Now you got 2 firsts. So many times I look at roster Snoog and they send them to me, and it's a barren wasteland of picks. You look at it and you're like, oh, man. Like, your starting lineup is great. But as soon as you have an injury, what are you going to do?
Yep.
You know, like, if you have an injury to a CJ Stroud or Lamar Jackson, okay, that's great. You trade them down. But if you lose a Christian McCaffrey, you can't trade down. No one's going to give you much.
Exactly. You nailed it there. And I think where you want to try to target that trading Christian McCaffrey is getting a Gibbs, getting a Breece Hall, and getting a Bijan Robinson. Maybe add a little bit, see what the market's at on that, or wait till the season starts. Once week 1 starts, then you make that type of move, because then Christian McCaffrey gains a bunch of value because people are like, I want to win. Like, this is a guy that's going to put up 400 points. Another move, like you said, I love like the Kamara, the Mixon tier down and getting like an early first or like 2 late firsts on top, because people will pay 2 firsts for Christian McCaffrey all day. And if it's Joe Mixon or Alvin Kamara that they have to fare well with, they're going to do that. Like, they're not going to hold on to those assets. Everyone's looking at McCaffrey as like such an upgrade and he's guaranteed RB1 overall. It's not. And like, this is a guy that has had the injury history in the past. If he gets hurt again, the value is, it's not even if we value him, it's the overall market. No one's going to want him. And then you're going to be stuck with this guy, just like what happened to Michael Thomas, just like what happens to these type Julio Jones. To be fair, the best players always come to an end, and it's sad to say because Christian McCaffrey's a phenomenal player. He's still the best running back in football today. Takes that one injury, and the 49ers use him like a straight up workhorse. So just worries me a little bit injury-wise, kind of with his value in Dynasty. But if I was drafting today in redraft, I'd take McCaffrey RB1 overall all day. Same
here. And a move that I helped somebody make in the Patreon, and this is just, you got to think outside the box. He's like, I'm going to get Mixon in a first for Christian McCaffrey. I said, hold on. I was like, what kind of wide receiver room do you have? So he showed me his wide receiver room. So we took it from, he had Josh Downs, who's someone that I'm trying to tier up on. So we ended up getting Brandon Ayuk. And so that we got that Mixon, that first, and then an upgrade from Josh Downs to Brandon Ayuk. So it's like you end up getting yourself much safer assets. You have insulation with the picks. That's the way to do it, baby. So, all right. I know I went hot with Christian McCaffrey. Let's get another guy here on the board.
Yeah, I'm going to go with I have him written down, and this is another one where it's like, it's not that I'm out on the player, but there is some surrounding issues with him. And I think his situation can get a lot worse. It's Michael Pittman Jr. And this is a guy coming off a phenomenal season, 100 receptions, 150 plus targets, 1,000 yards. Like, the issue with Michael Pittman is his touchdown efficiency has been, I don't think he's scored more than 5 or 6 touchdowns in his career.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's changing with Anthony Richardson. And as much as we think Anthony Richardson's a great player, he's a talented player, he's going to break fantasy football if he hits his ceiling, he's probably not going to be a guy that throws for 45 touchdown passes, right? Like, this is a guy that probably runs a lot more. He's going to be like that Jalen Hurts where he's throwing 20, 25 touchdowns and running 10 in. I think that hurts an alpha wide receiver one like Michael Pittman. And I know he fed Pittman a lot last year when he played in his 3 games. That was without Jonathan Taylor, who's a workhorse running back that they just absolutely paid. They have pick 15, tons of rumors saying that the Colts want Brock Bowers more than anything, and they want to trade up to get him if they have to. Brock Bowers can play Michael Pittman's game better than he can. He's a better athlete. He's better underneath. He's better after the catch. That would be the death of Michael Pittman. And talented player, but you bring in a Brock Bowers there. He's just an easy read for Anthony Richardson, play after play after play. And Pittman's not a guy that's scoring 50-plus touchdowns or 50-plus yard touchdown passes like game after game, right? Like, he's a guy that's just purely dominating off volume. You bring in a Brock Bowers, you got Josh Downs going into year 2. You got a healthy Jonathan Taylor, a healthy Anthony Richardson. The Colts are going to be scary, but Michael Pittman's not going to be that top 4 wide receiver, top 5 wide receiver that we saw. I'd much rather turn him into a DJ Moore, a Jalen Waddle, a Devontae Smith, plus maybe if you can get that, a Brandon Ayuk. Again, another guy. I'd rather players in that relative range over him, or I'm going and getting a Devontae Adams plus a first, a Mike Evans plus a first, an Amari Cooper plus a first. Like, those are the type of moves that I'm looking to cheer off of Michael Pittman with. And if I can't get anything I want, I'm fine holding him because, again, he's still a guy that gets a ton of volume, safe player, but someone's got to play devil's advocate with these talented players and give reasons to why I think they could be sells, or why, like that right there, Pittman 208 for 11 and a third. Boom. That's a great
move. I threw
that
up there. Howie threw that in there.
Move.
I love you guys that are following along. I mean, we got like Cody Dickhausen straight up. Yo, what's up, Dad? You got my man, what do we have? Just a couple of symbols, but he's like, hey, Snoog, Dad already approved it already, but what do you think of an insulated trade of Kenneth Walker for a 26 first and third?
Yeah, another trade that I love, right? Like, it's just...
Oh, no, wait, hold on. He had it as 2 parts. Kenneth Walker in a third or Ramondre Stevenson in a first?
I'd take Ramondre's side, I think.
Yeah, that was
the first.
I read that out loud, and I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. We didn't go over that. That's not Dynasty Dad approved. It's in between there. I love it. So back to Pittman, and I love when you guys are commenting on YouTube. You guys make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube page. We're going to be doing some big things in May. Can't wait to really tell you guys about that. Launching what, at Brock Dynasty's been doing for us for our TikTok page as well. Make sure you guys go follow him. But the Indianapolis situation is interesting because my sell was actually Jonathan Taylor, because of similar things that you said is, for me, I think Anthony Richardson is going to have a more Josh Allen effect on rushing touchdowns and limit some of those touchdowns for Jonathan Taylor. I'm not saying I'm selling Jonathan Taylor and just say blindly, but the other day I sold Jonathan Taylor in the 201 for the 103. I'm okay with that because I want Malik Neighbors so bad. Like, Malik Neighbors is going to last a long time. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a top 10 running back this year. I think long term he's right there. He's a top 5 dynasty running back. If you had to move Pittman, because we're both, in that Colts area, what would you be looking for in return? Like, are you looking to move to a Tank Dell? Are you looking to tier up to an AJ Brown? Because I think you could get AJ Brown from Michael Pittman in a second, as crazy as that is. And I have Pittman as my wide receiver 10 for 2024, not dynasty but redraft, and I have AJ Brown as my wide receiver 6. And I think you can make some of those kind of moves. Or if a guy is if you're a contender, I think you could add a second to even get Tyreek Hill. And to move into those areas where you're moving up to some elite level production for 2024.
Yeah, you could look at it 3 different ways. You could get guys in the relative area for him 1-for-1, like Devontae Smith, maybe an Ayuk. Maybe you can get like a DJ Moore. Jalen Waddle is a guy I actually traded Pittman, my only Pittman share for Jalen Waddle, Zach Moss in a third. Like I love that. I'll take that all day. You could also go up, get AJ Brown. You could get Chris Olave, Tyreek Hill, or you could go down and you could go into, if I'm going down, I'm targeting Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper. I'm targeting those guys, Stephon Diggs. I'm targeting guys that are going to put me over the top for the following year and this current year and give me draft capital on top. Like get that first on top of Mike Evans for Pittman. Get that first on top of Adams for Pittman. Those are the type of moves I'm making because the day the Colts draft Brock Bowers, if they actually end up getting him somehow, we don't know anything yet. A lot of it's smoke screens. The day they draft Brock Bowers, people are going to start to be like, okay, where does Brock Bowers win on the football field? Oh, where does Michael Pittman win on the football field? They win in the same exact way. And Brock Bowers is that player that's more versatile. He's the better athlete. He's better in the short areas. That would be the death. Not the death of Michael Pittman, but that would definitely cap his ceiling big time, I think.
Okay, the next one, again, I keep coming up with these names that I shouldn't be selling, but I'm only doing it under certain parameters, is I'm going to sell Joe Burrow right now. And Joe Burrow, 27 years old, obviously was struggling with the offensive line, struggled with the offense last year. I recently sold him for Brock Purdy in the 104, which I'm okay with because I think Brock Purdy is putting up very similar. Last year had better numbers, but I think he's going to, without the rushing upside on Joe Burrow, I think Brock Purdy's going to put up very similar numbers within 3 to 5 points per game. And if I can get something added, like a 104, like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, like a Garrett Wilson, I still think that's in the realm of possibility because people do not believe in Brock Purdy enough that there's that much of a gap. I saw a trade the other day, a guy got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff. I would do that 2 for 1. You're getting yourself a wide receiver 1 and a back end QB 1. I'm not saying make this kind of move for Bryce Young in a first or someone. Make it be a solidified player. If you can move down to a Purdy, down to a Love. I saw a guy in the Discord the other day got Kyler Murray in a first for Joe Burrow. I'm doing that all day long because I think Kyler Murray's going to pass Joe Burrow this year. I really think he is, or at least be in that same tier. And this is what we're talking about. It's not that I don't love Joe Burrow. It's just that, okay, here's the value. I'm going to try to add a little bit, and I'm going to move myself into that area because, Snoog, every time I end up going the other way and I start to trade Brock Purdy plus the 104, 103 for Joe Burrow, I regret it because then all of a sudden that guy at 103, 104 pops off, and it's like, it gets difficult. It gets so much easier when you tier down and you add value. Gives you more chances. You're on mute.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it there. I think, like you said, Kyler Murray's a guy that is potentially getting himself his Jamar Chase, right? Like he's getting his Marvin Harrison, his Malik Neighbors. We haven't seen him with a receiver like that since D-Hop. And when he had D-Hop, he put up, 440 fantasy points that year? Like, he needs that type of receiver because he's a very talented passer. Like, he has a great deep ball. He's not a run-first quarterback. He runs when there's nothing there. And there wasn't a lot of stuff there for him for a while because his wide receiver 1 and 2 was what? Christian Kirk is a rookie second-year player, and then D-Hop when he was like 29 years old. D-Hop was still great, but like Kyler Murray had those elite weapons, and there were still not things there, so he's still running the football. This year, we're going to probably see him run the football a lot, even with a Marvin Harrison Jr. joining the room. And who's their wide receiver 2 right now? Michael Wilson? Like, they're going to need to make some moves. They got 2 first-round picks. They're going to beef up this room for Kyler Murray, whether it's in the backfield, on the offensive line, out there running routes. Like, Trey McBride is a perfect Kyler Murray piece. And then you're going to bring in a Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going to have 2 elite weapons. Kyler Murray is one of my favorite buys. He has been for 2 years now. I was drafting him at like QB 16 when he tore his ACL, and I was getting him in like the 3rd or 4th round. I have so many Kyler Murray shares because of it. Again, it's a guy that can outscore Joe Burrow. He can outscore Justin Herbert, and he probably will. Those are the kind of guys you want to target.
I had Lamar Jackson in that same kind of conversation as Joe Burrow. This is not a sell, but
I think Lamar's a sell big time.
I think you can get Kyler in the 104 to 106 for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
And I would definitely do that. So we
Lamar's
each get one
massive sell.
We've hit 10. We each get 2 more sells. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'll touch quick on the Lamar one. I think he is a sell because he's going like QB3, QB4. Everyone's whining about CJ Stroud being where he's valued. Lamar Jackson was already getting all his touchdowns in the goal line vultured from him from Gus Edwards. What do you think Derrick Henry is going to do?
Yeah.
King Henry's going to do that plus between the tackles, and Lamar Jackson doesn't have 5,000 passing yard upside with 40 plus touchdowns. Like, this is a guy that probably finishes in the QB 8 to 10 range, maybe 6 range. He can get there with 600, 700 rushing yards, but Lamar Jackson does not have the same ceiling that he once had. He was MVP last year, and the dude had like 370 fantasy points. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm insulating with Anthony Richardson in a mid first.
Yeah,
I'm rebuilding with Kyler in a first. I'm contending. I'm adding a late first to get Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen's value somehow mentally for some people has suppressed, but Josh Allen has been the QB1 or QB2 in back-to-back-to-back seasons, and he's going to do it again this year. Like, everybody's just discounting it. So I love that we're on the same page there with Lamar. 2 quick ones. You go first. I'll bring it home. Last 2 buy or sell lows. See, I'm so used to saying buy. We always talk buys. Now we're talking sells, and I think this is going to ruffle some feathers because people are going to hear some of these names. But that's what we do at Smash, except we're not just bringing you, go sell Gus Edwards. What are you going to get, a third? We're trying to give you guys to make value.
I'm going to go with 2 guys here that I think are just going to be buried in their current offenses. First, Jameson Williams. I don't think he'll ever be fantasy relevant to the point where he's like winning you leagues, right? Like he's a guy that maybe he has that top 20 season, like that Will Fuller type. He's that deep threat. He's a lot better for the NFL and for the Detroit Lions when he's healthy than he is for fantasy football. So I'm selling him. He's like in the wide receiver 40s range. I'd take guys like Wicks plus. I'd take guys like Amari Cooper, and I'd add if I have to. And then Christian Kirk. He's a guy that is in the 30s range as well. I'm taking guys like Amari over him. I'm adding to get Mike Evans. I'm adding to get Devontae Adams. Another guy, Evan Ingram. Where does Christian Kirk win from? The slot. Evan Ingram, back-to-back years with the most slot targets at the tight end position, with over like 400 routes ran out of the slot. Like that's where Evan Ingram wins. That's his bread and butter. He is going to be that slot guy. Okay, so now where does Christian Kirk go? He goes to the Z, right? Gabe Davis is there. They brought in Gabe Davis on a big contract. This is a guy that wins vertically. That's going to be Gabe Davis's role. They're picking at pick 17. There's a damn good chance they grab a Adonai Mitchell, a Brian Thomas Jr., maybe a Xavier Worthy. Christian Kirk is the guy that I think is just going to get lost in the sauce a little bit. He'll still be that third option, second option out of the receiving room. But like a Gabe Davis is going to be that guy that wins deep. And it's going to be a Christian Kirk, I think, is just getting mixed up in the wrong situation, in the wrong spot. And there's just guys in his relative area that I'd much rather over him because Trevor Lawrence loves to push that ball downfield. So you're going to probably see Gabe Davis with those volatile weeks, kind of in that Jameson Williams role, right? They brought this guy in to do that. They're going to bring in a Brian Thomas to be that alpha wide receiver 1, and then Evan Ingram. Someone's going to take the hit. I think it's going to be Christian Kirk, just at value, right? Like he's better than Gabe Davis. He'll outscore Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis is going to kind of hurt him and eat into what he finds his success. So
I like that a lot. I know I've been bringing heat on a lot of these, and now my last one's just going to be not quite as hot. It's going to be a little bit boring, but it's Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard right now's market value is the 203. I'm out at that price, rebuilding right now. If I can add a second and get a 25 first, I'm doing it. If I'm contending, I want one of those guys plus. Snoog, I think for me right now, guys like Tony Pollard are in that middle, for redraft, they're in that borderline 18 to 25 range. I want nothing to do with those guys. I would rather go high end, or I would like to insulate back. And I think Tony Pollard, someone's like, I'll add a little bit for Derrick Henry. I'll add a little bit for Alvin Kamara. I can probably get Joe Mixon plus. I can probably get Najee Harris pretty even up. I could probably get, some of Kendrick. Exactly. If I'm rebuilding, I could get Kendre Miller plus a second. And then all of a sudden, Kendre Miller starts by week 8 with a Kamara injury and he balls out. So like Tony Pollard's just a guy that I'm using to tier up or tier down. I don't really want to own him.
Yeah, just another guy.
Just another guy. That was not just another pod. You guys asked, so we came out there. We hit you with that. You guys have been asking for sells all the time because Snook and I are always talking about buys. And I mean, when it comes to Dynasty, buys and sells are price dependent. Like so many of you guys want to say this guy's a buy or this guy's a sell. They're neither. Like they're both. They're, like we can go to an area, whatever the price is. That's what matters. It's a matter of like, if I can buy James Cook, like I said, at 205, then I can watch him win me a championship and become worth the 111. Now he's worth the 19. I'm selling. If I can get Brian Thomas Jr. or, like heaven forbid, Brock Bowers drops to 8, I can move up into that area. There's so much more you can do with the 108 or 109 than you can do with a guy like James Cook. So hopefully those are some ideas. that you guys, can go make some moves on. We're always talking buys and sells in the Patreon. We're always talking values. Snook and I are going to really start hitting rookies the next couple of weeks. So, Snook, I'm pumped, man. I am pumped. This is a fun time of year.
Best time of the year. I've said this multiple times. We get Christmas morning 4 times a year. Christmas itself, the draft, week 1 of the NFL season starting, and then the combine. So tune in, guys. This is what we're here for. We're going to keep doing this stuff. Like Dad said, sells come in windows, right? Like, it's easier to say to buy a guy than to sell a guy. As long as you make a good point as to why you're selling this guy, that's fine. But people out there are just going to say, sell this guy, sell this guy, sell this guy. No, I want to know why I'm selling this guy and who I'm selling this guy for. Because anybody can tell you someone's bad, right? Like, there's people out there, a lot of people on Twitter just saying this guy's bad, this guy's bad. Oh, everybody just says everyone's good. Okay, what do? You just tell people that, you just say that this guy's bad. Okay, why? Why is this guy bad? And who's better than him? Who do I want to trade this guy for? That is how you kind of win in Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. And that's the advice that we're trying to give you guys.
And I think that's the added bonus, right? I've always been there on the market and the selling side and how you make deals. You're a lot more in on the ins and outs of why this guy wins, that guy doesn't win. So it's a perfect pairing. Love it, man. Thanks again for tuning in and enjoy the process. Did I really say Chris?